or you use the raise hand feature. Also, after the Q&A section, we would be having a photo session, and we would greatly appreciate if you can turn on your camera at that time. Also, just a reminder, Q&A section, we would be having a photo would be glad session, and we would greatly appreciate or join the meeting using camera at that time, so we can keep. Also, just a reminder, Q&A section, we would be having a photo would be glad session without any further delay. Greatly appreciate or join the meeting using camera at that time, so we can keep. So, just a reminder, Q&A section, good afternoon, everyone. Be having a photo would be glad session without any further delay. Greatly appreciate of the join the meeting using camera at that time, so we can keep. So, just a reminder, Q&A section, good afternoon, everyone. Be having a photo would be glad session without any further delay. Greatly appreciate of the join the meeting using camera at that time, so we can keep. So, just a reminder, we would be having we would be having this event as our third event. So the technological week is an event uh, organized by the EAG student chapter in coordination with the MSc Petroleum Geoscience, University Malaya. A short intro of our student chapter. Our student chapter was established since the end of February and is composed of University Malaya's postgraduate and undergraduate students. We had our first tour for Technology Week in the end of March. Until now, we will continue throughout May. Thankfully, our first ever technical talk of the year 2022 has received participants not just from the students within the country or within the university. We had students from outside the country, Indonesian, for example. And also we had professionals from the industry gracing our event, and we are glad we had that much of publicity done. This officially is the second week of the Technology Week. Our previous talk in the first week began with uh, a talk titled Introduction to Fractured Basement by Mr. Rahandian Anwar from Petronas. We also had an introduction to petroleum data model by Mr. Shafiq from Bicep. And lastly, for the last event, we had a talk titled Geomodeller's Role in Development Plan by Mrs. Zanaria Muhammad from Hibiscus Petroleum. So as for today, seems like we would be having a tentative continuation of the last event we had last week, which is titled Introduction to Geomodeling in Exploration and Production by Mrs. Nur Fahana Rahim Othman from Digital and Integration Section, Scrambaja, East Asia, based in Kuala Lumpur. A brief introduction of Mrs. Nur Fahana Rahim Othman. Mrs. Nur Fahana, she is a senior geoscientist with 17 years of experience in the oil and gas industry, including petrol workflow consultancy for multiple clients in East Asia geomarket. Focal person for port seal analysis, geomodeler and training instructor. She's also experienced in geological static model to simulation ready model building, seismic interpreter, basin modeler, and certified NEXT instructor also. Currently, Mrs. Bahana, she is the electrotechnical suit deployment and support lead. Without any further delay, I would be glad to give the floor to Mrs. Nur Bahana as we would be listening to a talk from her today. Thank you, Mrs. Nur Bahana. You have the floor now.
And Assalamualaikum and Very good afternoon to everyone. Yeah, first of all, I would like to thank University Malaya for giving me an opportunity to present for today's sharing session. So let me share my screen. Before that, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Understand. Okay, thank you.
Yes, we can.
Let me share my
Yeah.
screen, and I will just turn off my video, right? Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. All right, so for today's sharing session, I will talk about introduction to geomodeling in exploration and production activities. So my name is Farhan, and introduced by Yusuf. I've been in Selam Beceh for 17 years. Yeah, I graduated from University Malaya back in 2000. Let me recall, back in 2005. Yeah, and then after that, joined Slumberjay. Yeah, I started as a petrol geoscientific support, yeah, mainly for petrol workflow. And now, actually, I'm involved in one of the digital project in Slumberjay called Live FTP, and then working on more on digital enrichment within our Delphi Petrotechnical Suite. So for today's session, I will go through this agenda. So first, I will go through introduction to E&P. Most of you are aware what's the E&P stages within the oil and gas industry, and then we'll go through geomodeling in E&P and introduction to the geomodeling, or we also call it subsurface modeling. And for the geomodeling workflow, I will go through each of the process that it consists within the geomodeling workflow itself, which is the structure modeling, property, and volumetric and uncertainty. And for this geomodeling workflow, I will refer to the Petrel technology itself, yeah, go through within Petrel workflow. And last but not least, I would like to highlight some of the digital enrichment that we have within our technologies. Now, the most recent technologies that we call Delphi, and then I will just walk you through on what's the digital enrichment that we have within digital modeling workflow itself. Okay, so to start with, yeah, so I believe all of you are fully aware within the oil and gas industry. Basically, we divided into three major sectors, right? We have upstream, or we call it also upstream E&P, yeah, and we have midstream and downstream. So for upstream, this basically this term within the oil industry, we should refer to the kind of a searching or recovery of your production of the crude oil or natural gas. And for this upstream, as you can see here, it's divided into two for the exploration and production. So for exploration, this is where we basically looking or search for the potential, either is it onshore or offshore for oil and gas reservoir, and also when we do the drilling of the exploratory wells. And for the production itself, this is for production and maintenance of, let's say, the wells and facilities that to recover or bring the crude oil or the natural gas to the surface and to the plant, and then also to process this produce hydrocarbon. And for the midstream, so for today's talk, we will mainly focusing on this. For midstream, this is involved more on the kind of transportation, let's say the storage or the, let's say, pipeline or oil tanker, the wholesale marketing of the crude hydrocarbon products, right? And then we basically have another downstream. This is for refining and marketing. So for the downstream sector, this is more on refining of our petroleum crude oil and also processing of purifying of raw natural gas. So basically, these are three sectors that we have within oil and gas industry. And for us, yeah, that's for us that study geology, geophysics, yeah, will work within the subsurface team, then we will involve heavily in this upstream E&P. Yeah. So to go through detail on this E&P for the oil and gas industry. So this is another five main steps, yeah, that actually, if we look into focusing on the oil and gas field development, and we have five different stages that include within this oil and gas field development. So first, on the discovery, or we call it field discovery. At this stage, the questions come actually, where is the field, right? So this is where the oil and gas, basically we all know that the oil and gas are trapped in reservoir rocks and also buried in underground, either it's onshore or offshore. And then to locate this kind of hydrocarbon accumulation, geoscientists, right? Geology or geophysics, we actually analyze the image that coming from the Earth subsurface to produce that actually produced by the seismic. For example, hydrography, you have the seismic data, and based on that, we basically build a model of geological of the subsurface, right? And then we identify the potential of the reservoir, or we also call it as a prospect. And then during at this stage, we basically for the operator companies, right? Yeah, they will do the exploration wells, right? To check if the identified prospect actually contain hydrocarbons or not. Yeah, so these are typically for this kind of well, exploratory well, these are typically several kilometers deep. And then when we're moving to the next stage, which is the field evaluation, right? So at this stage, where the questions rise, the amount of the reservoir, how much reservoir that we have within the reservoir. So during this field evaluation, so we have the discovery at the discovery stage. Once confirmed, then we also run the 3D numerical reservoir scaling model, right? So this is why to estimate, yeah, the initial volume of oil and gas in the reservoir. And then also, this is also to kind of simulate the reservoir fluid behavior, and also to optimize the field development scenario. Let's say the number, the type, the location of the well, the level of the field production, and etc. And after this, then during this evaluation, normally the appraisal well that actually drill, yeah, to improve the field description, right, through the further data of the acquisition that we had. And then next stage, which is the development stage. So this is basically the stage of the here the question then arrive on the production facilities, design, and implementation. So for this development, we basically at this stage will establish the number of the wells are we drill, yeah, to reach the production objective. So they become extract the fluid within the reservoir, and also this also will discuss the type and the of the installation of, such as, like, say, the platform. This is depending on the either if it's onshore or offshore. Let's say if it's a marine environment, what consideration to take into account to design this, for example, tide, storm, etc. And then also in this stage also we need to think about the separation system for gas, fluid, and the treatment system needed to preserve the environment. And this the fourth stage. We need to think about the, yeah. So this is where the production of the oil environment. Yeah. And so for this, during this stage, we basically this kind of the or the time period for this hydrocarbon may be extracted. But this varies. That you can see here between 15 to 30 years, right? So for the last for time period, maybe extended 50 years or more, right? And then the lifetime of the reservoir is one composed of different kind of sensitivities, like, for example, the period of production increase, and the stabilization phase, injection phase, right, and the depletion phase. Yeah. So and then up to certain stage, yeah, for after the production, then there basically when the hydrocarbon production breaks that become non-economical, yeah, and then the reservoir is abandoned. So defeat the stage where the final stage was for this stage before the period of the actually the all the oil gas company depending the field. Basically what they they will differential the facilities such as the platform. They will put the well in safety, reserve the progressive down on the level reserve of the field, and also they will do the clean or to clean up and depollute or rehabilitate the site itself. So this is the state of the discovery of the abandonment of the field development itself. So when we go through each of the pages just now, we can see that for the geomodeling part, right, of when we from the beginning, right, you can see when the seismic data acquired and start from the model, and then it's include also the stage when we fit into the evaluation, and some of that will fit into development stage. Yeah. So the early stage of this EMP cycle, right? And then if we go to the tail of the reservoir modeling data, right? So what actually a 3D reservoir model, or we call it geomodeling. Someone call it reservoir model or geological model. So the model is basically a representation of the aspect or some of the aspect of the reality, right? So we basically the goal of the model operation. This is to simplify the reality, because of course we don't know what's going on underneath. Let's say if it's onshore or offshore. So we basically try to replicate uh, of the some of the aspect of the reality. So basically, here you need to integrate the available data that you have from the static data, the well data to capture kind of the key static or dynamic elements of the petroleum system. So this reservoir modeling will help you to basically understand the subsurface geological features. Then it will also help you to estimate and quantify oil and gas reserves. Yeah, so to achieve this goal, you basically must able to populate the subsurface geological features in the reservoir representation. So at a given scale, as you can see here, you have the image of like your reservoir model, right? And then we have the data coming from like the seismic data, or it can come from the well data, and we try to replicate what represent some of the aspect of the reality within the subsurface itself. Okay. So this is how the construction of the subsurface model. And then apart from the geological model, within the subsurface, we do have different other types of model, right? Of course, first on the geological model, this is basically designed to capture as much as possible the geological kind of heterogeneity in the area of the interest. So based on these geological features, then the models basically are complex, which is either structurally complex or ethologically complex, right? And then we basically try to capture all possible geological information so we can get correct static representation of the area of interest. And also, we can provide accurate in-place reserve estimation within the geological model. Apart from that, this geological model, this is basically and excellent also for the well planning too. Apart from geological model, we have reservoir engineering model, or we call it RE models. So these are dynamic models. So for reservoir engineering or RE models, this is designed to generate kind of like kind of a cellular grid that basically capture the essential of rock properties. Also include geological information, but also the well reservoir connection, and also that influence basically the dynamic behavior. Then this also will involve the run of the simulation, right? So this one involve the model for flow simulation, kind of a history matching, and also the production volume prediction. So this is RE model. Apart from that, then we also have a geomechanical model. So for the geomechanical model, this is to capture the geomechanical properties, right? For example, the elasticity, the strength of the reservoir rock, or the adjacent formation, to compute kind of state of stress, deformation, and also the potential failure in the 3D model. And we also have another type of subsurface model. We call it drill and well planning model. So for this drill and well planning model, this is a detailed well planning that actually can help you to optimize the well placement, in the area. Let's say if you have a difficult or complex geology, Yeah, so for example here in the image at the bottom here, the example of the 1D geometrical model that based on the drill well data and along a well itself. Yeah, so this type of model basically investigate the mechanical effects, right? Let's say of your rocks in well form or around the well itself. Let's say effects such as breakouts, loss, sand production, or well bore stability. And last but not least, on the exploration models, generally this is involved in the very large scale model. Yeah, you can construct kind of with very sparse data, right, or from the conceptual model itself. And it can include, let's say, the main formation, the faults, let's say, and also for the example, this exploration model, we can test and it's kind of an event of the petroleum system, either like a structural model to create a petroleum system model, or if geological structure observed today, if it could be generated by a certain geological processes. So we kind of like stripping and do the reconstruction of the structural model. So this is involved in the larger scale or normally in a basin scale. So this is exploration model. So, but for today, we will go through the first type of the model, which is the geological model, or we call it a subsurface geomodel, right? Okay, so once we know what is 3D reservoir model, what different types of the subsurface model, then we can go into the geomodeling workflow itself, right? So here you can see this is kind of the normal or the standard workflow to building a reservoir model. So the first stage, of course, we will start with data preparation. Okay, so where we have the interpretation of our data, let's say the geophysicists interpret the fault interpretation, horizon interpretation, or we also can get the interpretation coming from the well data. Geologists provide, let's say, the correlation of the wells, right? And then the characterization of the reservoir is provided also by, for example, petrophysicists. So all of these data preparation involve different, not only, let's say, geology and geophysics, that also can involve from petrophysics, right? From RE, for example. Then we also in this stage do some of data analysis before we perform the modeling itself. So, and then first, once we have everything that we need to build the 3D model, yeah, the data preparation is completed. And then we start with the structural model. So this structural model, this we will be discussed in a detail in the later slide. This involves creating kind of our structural framework of the model. Yeah. So this like the but here it depending on the 3D grid or the 3D type that we choose, yeah, to build our framework model. Because for the structure, we do have different kind of methods involved to build the structure modeling itself. And then once we have the structure framework, we have the fault, we have the horizon, then we need to fit in our properties values within this model or 3D geosolidal model. So this is where it comes for the next stage, which is the facies modeling and petrophysical modeling. In together, we call it as a property modeling. That consists of facies and also petrophysical modeling. So at this stage, basically, let's say for facies or technology, we will define it this is as a discrete data, and of course our petrophysical, we refer it as a continuous data. Discrete data, as you all know, this is like lithology. We have, let's say, sand or shale, which refer to the facies code. Let's say 0, 1, 2, 3, right? 0 is, let's say, shale, 1 is sand, let's say 2 is, let's say, cool, yeah. Then this is discrete. For the continuous data, petrophysical modeling, this is involved the continuous data like porosity, permeability, water saturation, where everything is the value will be in the decimal places, right? Your value of porosity, let's say 0.3%, for example, right? And then your permeability value. So this is in decimal places, so we call it a continuous data. And then once completed for phase sheet and also petrophysical modeling, and then our ultimate goal is to find the volumetrics. Yeah. So in between this, we basically define what is the contact, and then we express the volumetric. And finally, once we complete the volumetric, we will run the uncertainty analysis, right? So of course, within our subsurface model, we do have a large of variation, right? Uncertainty coming, the uncertainty can come from the structure model, it can come from the phase shift, from petrophysical, from the fluid contact itself. So we need to assess this uncertainty. So we call it uncertainty analysis, right? And then last but not least, we basically completed the static model. We have the volumetric, we have the cases, the probability for the metric cases, let's say our probability 10, P50 or P90, then we basically pass the static model to the reservoir engineering to continue for the dynamic simulation workflow, right? So this is when once we have, let's say, confident with the static, then we pass to our to RE, and then after that RE run like the kind of the history meshing, and also to later on we will design, let's say, a well infill for the infill drilling or coordinate drilling, right? So this is the standard process, right? From data preparation to the structure model, fascist model, petrophysical, and the volumetric. So this is kind of a complete process of the geomodeling workflow. And before we start with the structure model, example with this geomodeling workflow, I will use Petrel, yeah, as our technology to use, our application to use in this example. So before we move to the structure model, before we go in detail, right, doing the structure modeling workflow, we need to know what type of grid that have, and then what type of grid that we need to choose. So this will depend on the data type that we have, the complexity of the area, and also the purpose of the project itself, right? Because different type of grid will serve a different purpose. So for this, for example, in this simple grid. So this is a grid without a fault, right? This simple grid, normally we run the simple grid for the velocity model or to get a quick access of a metric for the, let's say, the GRP itself, right? And then we also have kind of this one, we call it pattern grid. This is more on the reservoir engineering workflow, right? If you have kind of a different grid geometry at specific area, you can have some of the cost or the fine grid. Yeah, let's say you want to have the defined grid at the near the wellbore. Yeah, for the wellbore analysis, and far away from that, you will get the coastal grid. Then you can use the tartan grid. And our traditional method of the building structure model in Petrel, we call it this pillar gridding. Yeah, so pillar gridding process, and we have also structure framework. Yeah. So for in this example, I will go through the structure framework where we have built the structure model, slightly different approach or the traditional pillar grid. So once you build this in the structure framework, we basically can create a structure grading. You can choose either to build the corner point grid based on the stair step grid. As you can see, the fault will be in the stair step geometry. And another one is we call it depot grid. Yeah. So this is also corner point grid, but you will see the unstructured cut cell. It's totally remove the cell at the faulted area. Okay, so I will go through into detail in the later slide, yeah, to explain on this type of the grid. Okay, so once we know the type of grids available, and then we understand our data availability, the complexity of the area, the purpose of the project, the timeline, and then we need to choose the best method, yeah, to build the model. And this is the overall picture of Petrel modeling workflow and the grids that are available. Yeah. So of course, we will start with this is coming from geophysics, the seismic interpretation, and then it will feed us the data such as the horizon interpretation, fault interpretation, and then we build the fault framework model itself and building the structure model. And if we go through another traditional method, we can build the pillar fault model, right? So this pillar fault model also consists of the same process for modeling, but it actually have additional pillar grading process. And for this part, right? So once we build the framework model, or we create a structure model, we call it VBM because the algorithm behind using is a volume-based modeling or VBM. And then we have option either to build a depot space, depot grid, and or the step grid, right? So depot grid, mandatory you need to run the depot space calculation, and for the step, you also can use coming from the framework. So you have two options here. And the rest will be similar, go to the property modeling stage, and then we pass the run up to the volume calculation and also the uncertainty, and then pass to the model, the simulation to run history imaging, for example. Right, just some information. If you run this using the depot grid, the simulation the simulator need to be in intersects and not from eclipse, right? Okay, so this is a simulation of product from Schlumberger. So this is overall a picture of petrol modeling workflows and grids that available for us to build our structure model. Structure model is the first stage when we're building our geo model. Okay, and then what's the difference between this, let's say, depot grid and also the step here? So uh, each of these having like kind of pro and cons, right? So for pillar grading here, we know that this is a legacy grid, well established, but sometimes it cannot handle the complex structure, right? And then let's say double trunk, let's say the flower structure, the lambda faults, most complex, not only structure but also stratigraphy. So here there's some of limitations. Then that's why we come up with the framework, the structure framework model. And then from such a framework, you have these two choice. For the decode grid, we basically for depot grid, sorry, for the step before the depot grid, for the step here is basically we can handle more complex structure compared to the pillar grid here. Yeah. But it will compromise the fault because the fault geometry will be kind of a zigzag or due to the step pattern, right? So it will not give you kind of true structure representation of your faults. And here we have for the pillar grid, for the complex structure, when you run, you will have you need to compromise with the cell itself and also the fault geometry. Yeah, the cell sometimes will be distorted due to the pillar grading, and then here the cell is really good, but we need to compromise the fault geometry. But for the grid, as you notice that we have a good cell, a perfect cell, and also a good representation of our fault geometry. Yeah, so this is introduced back in 2018, yeah, Petrol 2018, and we have this depot grid to handle most, I can say, all type of complexity, right? Like what we can handle from the step grid, but at the same time, it will keep the true structure of the fault, right? The fault, it looks like more on the pillar grid, but the cell itself will look like more on the step. So it will take both advantage or good side from these two type of model. Oops, sorry. Okay, so this is overall picture of the modeling journey if you are using Petrol. And then for this presentation, I will go through this path, right? I will go through from the fault framework and then the structure model. Yeah, and then here this is just some basic theory on the volume-based modeling itself. Yeah, what is this? We call it volume-based modeling. So volume-based modeling. So first we start with the input data. We have our fault, we have our horizons, right? Which is coming from seismic interpretation. Also, we also have some well data. Let's say we have the well tops, for example. And then we use this input, yeah, in the background, our fault, our horizon, and it will create kind of tetrahedral mesh. Yeah, you can see the tetrahedral mesh. It will generate this, yeah, that actually it will conform to the fault, and it will conform to the fault, and it will have the discontinuity, yeah, and then it will use this to control the stratigraphic. And then it will basically at the background it will create kind of the volume model. right? So this is fully unstructured, faulted, and we have this, we call it volume of interest or VOI. And then it will extract from this volume, it will extract kind of the stratigraphic function that will reflect to the stratigraphic of the data. Let's say where we have the confidence of the fault, and also it will link to the relative geological age of our formation, the youngest to the oldest and to the youngest, right? And then it will basically create kind of a smooth function, and it will extract this stratigraphic function, and then it will subdivide back into the volume into the layers, and then you will get your horizon itself. And finally, with the model refinement, we will get the zoning of our model. So this is kind of a complete structural framework up to from the input data up to the horizons and the zones and the geological layers. So this is behind the scene. You can see once you're running the VBM, but this is what it does behind the scene. Yeah, so we call it volume-based modeling or VBM. So at the first step on building the geo model, we have we have to build the fault, right? We call here structural framework. So the input for the fault framework, of course, we can have our fault interpretation, fault state, point, fault surfaces, right? That coming from the interpretation, coming from the seismic interpretation, and then we build this fault framework model. So this is the first step. Using this approach, first run, Petra will run it for you. It will auto detect the fault relationship. It will auto detect if there's any connection or truncation between the fault, which one is major or minor faults, then it will run for you. Then once it's completed, you can basically QC, right? QC back the result. And once complete the fault framework and you QC perform the QC check for your fault model, then we'll define the model boundary to limit the extension of our model. All right, so we don't, our rated work is just a part of the whole area that we can cut off or chop off, yeah, to improve the performance of our geomodeling workflow. So we define the boundary, or if it's needed to follow a specific polygon or area, then we can use a polygon to define the boundary. You also can use, let's say, your seismic survey as a boundary or any other input data to refer as a boundary. This to limit the also the lateral extension of the model. Yeah, and then once we define the boundary, then we build our model or horizon. We call it model constructions, the VBM. Once completed, then we do the model refinement where it built in with your zones, and if it's in detail, then you have the layers, right? So this is model refinement using the VBM for the second step. So once completed this process, this is you completed the structure framework model. But at this stage, you don't have the grid to fit in the property yet. That's why you need basically for the next step to convert this model into, we call it the structural grading, where it will convert into the either input grid or the step depending on your objective or what's actually the complexity of your data, and then the purpose of your or the geomodeling work itself, right? It can detect either you want to proceed with step or the input grid. So this is overall on the structure modeling itself. And if you go to detail, I just want to highlight on the fault framework and also the model construction itself. So for the fault framework, what it does during this workflow, it basically, this is just an example on the one side of the fault. So I say you can see the fault of the red and also the green color, right? So behind the scene, what it does, it will look into your fault interpretation, right? The algorithm will basically automatically generate like a series of kind of, we call it tetrahedral mesh. You can see this kind of triangular things inside your fault plane itself. It will build this triangular mesh, yeah. And then we call it tetrahedral mesh. And then it will fit, best fit with your fault plane, right? Based on the input fault that you give. So, for example, you can see this interpretation, and it will build the tetrahedral mesh based on this interpretation, and then it will build the fault model itself. Or you can see here the fault plane, right? So So in this stage, the algorithm will basically detect if it's find the larger fault that actually cut and then will truncate a smaller fault. It will detect which one is the minor, which one is the major faults. Yeah, and it will also detect the intersection between these two faults. What is the relationship between these two faults? So you can see that here the fault should be truncated, right? Should be truncated between these two faults. So what it does, the second is basically you need to weld the faults. We basically calculate the mesh intersection to define, okay, this is supposed to be the intersection between these two faults, right? And then this red fault will basically truncate to the green faults. And the final step in the fault framework modeling is to do the truncation. So it will properly truncate, apply the truncation based on the fault relationship, either to truncate top or to truncate bottom. So this at this stage, then it will complete the fault framework. It will basically, this is just one example. In your model, if you let's say you have hundreds of faults, let's say, or 50 of faults, that it will look into these 50 faults and detect the major, minor, and then detect all the fault relationship. And then what you do as a geomodeler, you will basically to see and look, and then either this is truncation is correct, either the minor and major faults detection is correct. If not, then you have to update accordingly. Okay, and this is the first stage of the fault framework modeling. So once it's completed, you have basically a complete fault model. Then we'll go for the next step, which is building the horizon, or we call it model construction. So the input for this model construction, you can have the horizon interpretation coming from your geophysicists, right? Or you have also you can have a points data, or you can also have a surface. But the best data is coming from original seismic horizon interpretation. And before you can run this model construction, we need to understand the geological settings of the area. So for example, what are the different sequence that you have within the area? So based on this understanding, you need to know the stratigraphy. Let's say you have kind of like erosional event, or you have discontinuous, or is it between this horizon, is it conformable or proportional to each other? So you need to understand, because in this stage, you need to set the correct event of your horizon. Either is it erosional, either is it conformable, or is it discontinuous, right? So basically, for example, this we have, let's say, for base, we have if let's say the younger sequence truncated to against the base, we call it base, and for conformable, your sequence, your horizon will be parallel to each other. There's no truncation, so we set as a conformable. And then if it's say discontinuous, basically neither the underlying or nor overlying a sequence actually parallel to this sequence. So we put it as discontinuous. And for erosional, we know that the older sequence will truncate against it. So we need to set it as erosional. So we need to properly set the correct stratigraphic sequence within this model construction stage, yeah, to honor the geological settings within our area of our model and area. And basically what it does behind the scene or in the background, it will create a kind of implicit function of isostratigraphic function that I shared with you earlier on the BBM model, BBM algorithm, right? So this implicit function actually also we refer it to relative geological age. It will start from older to younger sequence, and it will create a value that represent the relative geological age. Yeah, and then each of these value will correspond to the set of the sequence that we find here. Yeah, so this is the example on the settings. If you're working in Petra and the model construction, you can see basically you have the horizon type here to set a proper geological settings within your area. Okay, and then here, once you put in your input, then you will get basically the horizon model itself, right? So earlier we have faults, now it will build the horizon model. And then after this horizon model, we need to do the detailed layering or zoning, where we have, let's say, the model refinement, it will build the zone between the horizon, it will build the zoning itself. Then up to that point, then we actually completed the structural model. So this is coming from the structure framework. And this is example that you can see different geological settings for some of the extension and also compressional type of geological settings within that actually have been built with this VVM, or we call it structure framework model. Okay, you can see some example. The first one, this is using physical sandbox model. Yeah. Uh, and this is you can see how they built based on the sandbox model. You're using the BBM. You have this is the final product. Okay, so this is the input of the faults and the process between, and this is the final, the horizon, and this is up to the model refinement where you have a complete zonation. Okay, the second one, this is coming from Geoscience Australia. Yeah, and also extension model. And we have compressional, for example, number 3 here. This is overthrust model. Yeah, you can see from the published paper. And then here you all have a thrust back model, right? This is based on the synthetic data. So this kind of complexity, right, either structurally or stratigraphically, we can handle and build using this structure model, using the VDM algorithm, and using the structure framework. And after we have completed the structure model, next is to move to the property modeling. Yeah. So basically, modeling require a good geological understanding of the reservoir, and also the appreciation of the quality of the available data, and also the good understanding of the modeling techniques. Yeah, combination of these three. And then when you build the reservoir property model, the goal is basically to maximize kind of the value of the data. So we need to incorporate, for example, all the available information into a kind of a quantitative digital representation of our 3D model. So the data that available for reservoir modeling, this one we need require from many disciplines. As I mentioned earlier, it comes from the geophysics domain, it comes from geology, it can come from petrophysics, it can come from reservoir engineering, right? So when we build this model, it is kind of critical to integrate all of available data for data types that we have. So let's say in project with kind of sparse data, you have limited, let's say, number of wells, or they have limited data available. Then we basically can proceed with the basically the so this one we have the here before that, here we have three categories here, either deterministic, yeah, and then you also can have conceptual information. This is the deterministic, mainly to get the framework of the data, yeah, because we know, or let's say we have kind of, let's say, meandering channel environment, for example, for the lithology of fishes, and then we basically can run this based on the deterministic information. And for the conceptual, let's say if you have, let's say, some of the conceptual model that you have, or from, let's say, from the nearby field, or from the study, then you can get from this conceptual information kind of the connectivity, right? And we also have statistical information, yeah, the statistic of our data itself. So the statistic information, this is such as like the histogram, the variogram, the correlation, the trends that show within your data. So you need to provide this statistical information. And this conception, again, this is coming from the quite important based on the analog, or let's say outcrops, yeah. And this also can serve as a source of the statistic and also geometric information. Combination between of this conceptual statistical information, you basically will allow you to choose what's basically the key, choose basically what's the key. Hello, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes, we
Okay.
can hear you.
Okay, sorry. So this combination of the conceptual and statistical information, this will allow you to basically choose the parameter values, and then you can indicate, let's say, what's the upper or lower boundary for the key parameters, right, that exist within your data. So you can get the object orientation, what's the size, let's say, let's say, the channel, what's the thickness, the shape of the geobody, and also the correlation itself. Okay, so this is important when we consider when we build the property model. So all of these consideration need to take into account when we building the property model. And then if we look how we apply it, yeah, in the geomodeling works, here is example workflow coming from Material. Once we have a complete structure model, then we can start with property modeling data preparation. Yeah, we need to get all the available data to build our property model. So we need our facies, we need our petrophysical, let's say coming from the where logs. Let's say we have a facies log, or if we don't have the facies log, we need to do the interpretation of our facies, right? So similar with the petrophysical properties are coming from the petrophysical logs, right? Or you can have the interpretation for these petrophysical logs or discrete logs. And once we perform this data preparation for the property modeling, and then before we can build the model, because um, the wedlocks, yeah, and the 3D grid, we have a different scale, right? We need to basically scale up or average up, yeah, the wedlock, yeah, in order to fit into our model or geocellular, or we call it cell. So one cell will can only fit into one value. So I will go through detail on this scale up wedlocks in the next slide. And once we scale up the wedlocks, then we also can perform this one kind of geostatistic, right? Either univariate or bivariate, depending on the data that you have. Let's say you want to do based on the histogram, or bivariate. Let's say you have two variables, you want to see the correlation coefficient between the data. Then you will do the cross plot. And also, if you need to know the spatial relationship between your data, then you go for the variogram modeling. Yeah, so this is involve heavy geostatistic work. And once you have deep information, then you can proceed to perform the property modeling itself. First, on the pages, let's say you start with pages modeling, yeah, and you need to do the data analysis of the pages modeling, and then build the pages model itself. And then we later I will show you different kind of algorithm or method available for the pages modeling. Similar with petrophysical modeling, we perform the data analysis, and then we basically run either this is a deterministic or stochastic approach of the modeling. And of course, if we do have kind of secondary information, right, that can help our phase sheets or petrophysical model, then we can use the secondary property or information. So for example, let's say you build your phase sheet model, then you want to condition your phase sheet model, let's say to the porosity model, or let's say you want to use your seismic attributes to guide in your petrophysical modeling, then you can use that as a secondary information. And once we completed, we have our property model, we have our phase shift model, we have our petrophysical model, then we can basically compute the volume calculation, right? In between that, you need to run the plate contact. We need to know where is the location of your gas, for example, gas oil contact, or gas water contact, oil water contact, right? So all of these plate contact you need to determine or detect based on most of the time the original information either coming from the RE, from the petrophysicist, and then let's say based on your uh, water duration, let's say J function, or other parameters that involve within this volume calculation, then we perform that process and then run the volume calculation itself. Once we have the volume calculation, then we can run, let's kind of base case, we can run the uncertainty based on it. Let's say we are uncertain about our structure, or we are uncertain about the facies model or the petrophysical model. For the pages, let's say, is it we are certain about our geo bodies, let's say our channel, see the channel width can be, let's say, the width can be increased or decreased. Then we take into account all of these consideration in the uncertainty analysis, and then we will get based on this, we'll try to find, let's say, what is the probability volumetric, let's say P50, P90, or P10 of our model. So this is a complete property modeling workflow itself. Okay, and then of course to start with, let's say if we start with 3D shape modeling, there's a various tools for to perform this, right? Yeah, for let's say if you have your input data logs, let's say you can bring your in your logs data, you do the well correlation, we analyze the statistical information based on the histogram or the or if you needed some editing on the log, we do the log editor, or we also have calculator on the, let's say, the calculator of the wells that can perform, and also we do have kind of neural net process also to help with the preparation for interpretation for our phase, for example, right? We do have trend estimation model, and we can use kind of, let's say, attributes also to help, our phase model and also geobody interpretation. And you can use some of the utilities in between, or the polygons, or the surface, right? And of course, on the spatial relationship, we need to do some of the variogram analysis on it. Okay, and then based on this, you can see that once we have all the preparation of data, then we can do the method of scaling. We can also do some of the geometrical properties, as if you see our grid, okay, or to run some of the geometrical like let's say you want to compute the total gross rock volume within your area, then you can run it from this process. And of course, we also can perform data analysis. We need, let's say, for phase shifts, the proportion of our phase shifts, the thickness of the phase shifts, the probability of the phase shift, let's say per layer, and then do the special analysis on the variogram analysis, and also you also can, if let's say involve some of the trend in the data, then you can use the trend modeling, and perform the phase modeling itself. For this phase modeling, you will divide into two, either deterministic approach or stochastic approach. Then I will show you later the slide for what the algorithms or methods that you can use for this deterministic and stochastic. And once we completed this, then we can go to the petrophysical modeling. And then this is first on the data preparation, and this on the scale up logs or to QC. So if you can see, this is the original raw log versus the upscale sub. We need to fit in, our original raw logs coming from the well logs information to fit into our 3D grids, right? So one cell only can have one value. That's why we do kind of the upscaling or the averaging process itself. And then once you perform this upscale for all the well data that you have, then how to fit in between this well, then we do the modeling, the phase modeling, the property of petrophysical modeling, using based on the upscale cell that we have, right? And then of course we also have some of the QC, statistical QC or visual QC, between our original raw logs and the upscale. We need to see either it's under the original distribution of the data or not. And then we also can see visually or based on the statistic, either is it matched with the original or not. If it's deviate, then we need to find out what's the reason, right? So this is the scale up and the QC process. And after that, can do data analytics. What is data analytics? Why we do a data analysis? So if you notice, almost let's say all algorithm are using, let's say, kind of a kriging or kriging based algorithm. And this kriging based algorithm basically has a requirement. So to fulfill this requirement, we need to do, let's say, kind of a data transformation. That's why we need this data analysis, right? To make it ready for the algorithm itself, and it can be done this using the data analysis. So let's say since we have limited data and we rely on this kind of statistics, to fill up the unknown cell within our area, then we need to understand the statistical relationship between the data. So here we can basically see, we can do data analysis to understand pattern of the data, the distribution to make it ready for the statistical population itself. So this data analysis involve both either discrete or petrophysical properties itself. Then you also can use analog information in your data analysis, right? You can use a conceptual geological understanding within, let's say, understand the sedimentary environment. Then you can detect, let's say, what is the major direction of your data. And then you also can use kind of here with you kind of example on the variable map. Yeah. So this is to see the partial relationship between the data. So all of these can be used in the data analysis, right, to help you to understand further on the data before we perform the modeling stage itself using the algorithm. So what algorithm available for the phase sheet or lithology or discrete properties? Yeah. So here we have a deterministic approach. Yeah. Basically, for this deterministic approach, it will give you the same result with the same input data. So this is deterministic. It will run much more quicker, and this is very transparent. Yeah, to see very easy to see why your particular cell give a particular value and honor your input data. And for the stochastic, yeah. So for this stochastic, this one you need you have option to run multiple polarization. So let's say you are uncertain about the model itself, then you can run, let's say, three different fascist model, and then you can see the different between each of these model, right? Because we have the uncertainty lies within our model, then we can run the stochastic approach. If we have, let's say, very a good data, a lot of data, a lot of wells, let's say, then we can use, let's say, and we have the conceptual of our model. Yeah, we are confident that we are using deterministic. But normally we'll start with stochastic because of the limited of the data availability. Then we try to see if we can fit within this limited data and what other, let's say we run this more than one model. Let's say we set it as to run it as three, then it will give you the three different model, right, for your fascist model. And then we have different algorithm. Yeah, the most common here for the stochastic, we have a pixel based and object based. If you are not really certain on the geobody that you have, right, within your fascist or lithology, then you can start with pixel based. Yeah, we can use either a sequential indicator, or if you have know the relationship between the fascists, like say you have proximal, you have distal, then you can use the truncated Gaussian, either truncated Gaussian or with strands, right? And multi-point phase shift simulation as well. You can this is more on the advanced phase shift modeling, right? You can basically based on the pattern of the data, you can have a pattern which can help you to build the phase shift simulation itself, not using the traditional geostatistical. Yeah, it will based on the multi-point phase shift. And of course, we have objective. We have, let's say, a channel environment. We know exactly that we have a channel environment. Then we know our channel. Then we can model the channel itself using this objective. Or let's say we have a crevasse plane. We have offshore lake. Then we can use this object-based model, or we call it object modeling. Apart from that, you can see that the learning system or using artificial neural net. Yeah. So this is using kind of like either training data or supervised or unsupervised. Yeah, so they are learning based on the neural network algorithm. And for 3D petrophysical modeling, similar as I explained in the pages, yeah, we have here you have to go through data preparation, yeah, in order to prepare into the modeling stage, do all these scale up, geometrical, and then perform the petrophysical modeling itself before we can continue to the determine the site run, the bed contact, and also the volume calculation. For this 3D petrophysical model, also a similar approach, we have deterministic, yeah, or we have also stochastic. Deterministic is this one when we have dense data available, many wells, right? And then we have very confident with the data, then we use deterministic. If not, then we normally go to the stochastic approach. Similar, we also have artificial neural net. for the petrophysical properties. You can run petrophysical properties based on the neural net or learning system itself. And here, stochastic, you have two methods, yeah, sequential Gaussian simulation or GRSS. So this is algorithm used to basically run your property for example, porosity, let's say water saturation, permeability, right? So this is all the continuous property. And then, last but not least, our ultimate goal objective within our E&P workflow, this is a volume calculation, right? We need to know what is the in place for our hydrocarbon, yeah? Basically, there are various stages of the volume calculation process, yeah, depending on how much detail or information that you have. Let's say in the early stage, let's say in the exploration stage, you don't really have the 3D model yet, yeah? You want just to know, let's say, the 2D volumetric or the gross rock volume within the area. Then you can run this 2D volume calculation. But for us, when we build as a geomodeler, we have a complete geomodel, right? We run the structure model, property model, and we have this quick contact and determine the volume. Then we will use the most detailed volumetric, yeah, within the process. So we basically at this stage, we ready with all the detailed structural and detailed property modeling. Then we can define our contact and then we can run the volume to know what is the in place within our area. And of course, we can run after this the uncertainty. Yeah, using this volume calculation, based on this volume calculation, then we can run the uncertainty and basically something. So next on the uncertainty analysis. Yeah, so it is important for us to basically understand and also to kind of quantify the uncertainties in the reservoir model when we estimate the reserve. Yeah, for example, we uncertain about our structure and we uncertain about the contact or about the rock or fluid uncertainty that relate to our facies or porosity. Then we can run the multiple realization and see what's the impact. Let's say if the structure changes, let's say 10 meters above or 10 meters below, then what's the impact of our volumetric? This is why we run the uncertainty analysis. Okay, so we have multiple realization. Then we basically look at the gross rock volume or the soil, right? Depending on the parameters that the uncertain parameters that we have. So for this uncertainty, either you run the uncertainty analysis, you have the histogram of the distribution of your volume. Yeah, let's say you run, let's say 500 realization, then you have all these 500 volumetric cases depending on the changing of the parameters of the uncertainty. Yeah, you can see and you can detect here from the list what is the P10, P50, and P90 from the range. Or if you run the sensitivity, we can have kind of tornado plot, which actually refer to which parameters actually most uncertain or least uncertain within within our uncertainties. Let's say from here you can see the most uncertain. Let's say is it referring to the porosity? Is it referring to the minor or major direction? I say of your facies of the variogram. Then you can detect it on this tornado plot. So before this one, we completed the overall geomodeling stage. Just some digital enrichment. The latest technology actually we had, because now we know that we live within digital era right now. Then most of the technology now lies within the cloud itself, right? So if you heard about this, Delphi, this is Schlumberger cloud cognitive environment, right, for the E&P data workflow. So basically, you can see within the Delphi itself, we have a data ecosystem. Yeah, so this is kind of a Schlumberger cognitive environment. It is cloud-based, and we basically can accommodate all the data or the workflow that needed by E&P. From the E&P stage itself, right? You can see different type of data that can fit into the data ecosystem. And from here, we also have different, based on the different technology that we have, right? So above this data ecosystem, you can see the shared services, and also apart from that, we have four bucket here. Yeah, to this is the consuming applications that's available in cloud, where you know about petrol, technology, all these application has been listed in the Delphi or cloud environment. And we also have native application that actually born in Delphi, born in cloud. Yeah, like FP plan, Turing plan, and we also have the simulation engine. Yeah, for our dynamic simulation. And apart from that, we have the artificial intelligence or neural network, right? So we within this digital world, then the machine learning or the AI, it is common for us. So this also part of the digital engagement within the Delphi E&P environment. So if we relate to our geomodeling workflow. So here it's quite a busy slide, but what I want you to focus on the left side here for the GNG domain itself. So the digital enrichment, as you can see that, right, the one that related to the geomodeling, before we started building the model, then we have the machine learning for the seismic interpretation, right, for faults and also for the horizon. And also we have the machine learning for property modeling, we call it Ember. So this is the latest technology that actually evolve within the artificial intelligence itself. And you can see here we have also the PTX HPC, high performance computing. This is for running uncertainty analysis, right? It's very fast because it's using the HPC, high performance computing infrastructure in the cloud. So all of these new digital enrichment that we have and the fit within the geomodeling workflow that we have right now. Yeah, apart from the standard workflow, then we enrich with this digital enrichment. So I believe this is my last slide. Yeah. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Yeah. For your time. So any questions?
Thank you so much, Mrs. Noor. So that brings us to the end of our section, and we would like to entertain questions now. So the first participant who has a question for Mrs. Noor is Papa Oscar himself. So Papa Oscar, you can.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Noor, for the comprehensive presentation. I have two questions for you. The first one is maybe you could share your experience when you were a fresh graduate and then joining Sabaji, handling the application. Do you have any tips for the our student and also the attendant here? The second one, I think I would like to ask also on uh, is there any experience that you could share on to the student here, to the participant, especially on the most difficult situation on your job? I think that's two questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Oscar, for the questions. So for the experience, yeah, okay, so for me, because I actually majored in geology, applied geology, and then actually my journey started last time. We have this the normally the companies, right, will come to the university to do the screening, yeah, for especially for the final year student. So my experience start from there. Yeah. So somebody came to University Malaya, and then they did the screening for the student. So I just go there and then get interview, and then from there get another further interview. Right, it's listed a couple of students, and then from there. Actually, until after I think after graduate, then I'll actually join Slumberchick. And from my experience, when I first started, because I started as application support geoscientist, where basically I'm more on the applications, because we are a service provider, we are not a operating company, we are service providers. We provide a service to the major oil and gas company, and then my role during that time basically involved with these applications, especially on Petra, right? During my time, we don't have Petra back in university, but I understand right now we do have some of software donation, right, to the university. So it's actually a good opportunity if you have opportunity to learn the technology earlier, right? If you have access to this technology during the university, please grab it. Learn as much as you can. Because you will need it when you start working. But if you don't have access to it, like myself last time, I don't have access. But because your knowledge or geological domain knowledge is also actually important, right? Because we want to apply, even though I'm actually supporting application, but we need to understand when we build, let's say, with the model, we need to understand geological of information within our data itself, right? The faults, the type of fault, the horizons, the interpretation itself, the well correlation, the informations, so all these, what you've learned in university will be applied, even though not 100%, but it will be applied plus with the technology. So if you can advance these two, the domain knowledge and also the technology that we have right now, and then I believe it's a good opportunity for you, ready, to work within, if you are interested to work in the oil and gas industry. And I believe the domain knowledge and also the application itself, the technology is help you a lot when you basically start working. I know it's not 100% what you expected, but you have a good basic knowledge, then much more easier, right, to handle it when you start working within the industry itself. So my experience last time when I actually supporting the major company, helping them if they have any issue, let's say the building the model or to do some of the interpretation within the application itself, related to application. And then I believe not apart from that, the soft skill that you also need to have a good soft skill, right? The way you talk, the way you communicate within the team members, right? The way you communicate with your, let's say, client or among the peers, then this is also reflect, right? And then will also be judged when you do the interview later on. And then, of course, your cooperation, right? Let's say a leadership or engagement with others, right? They can see how good you are at it. So it will look into the overall picture. And then I believe my experience when I just started is interesting because I never seen Petra last time, and then start working with it and then apply what I have for the domain knowledge and apply in the application and provide the service to the client. And I really enjoy. Of course, you need to enjoy your work. So I enjoy my work, even though I'm not fully as a starting point, I'm the application support, not really doing the real job or the modeling, but by helping giving a service, and then you also have your encouragement, right? You have even though you're not doing from A to Z, but you know everything, the process and everything, and then it's much more easier for you. But of course, if you're really into a technical, doing the geomodel job itself, then it's much more better. It depends. Either you are interested for the joint service provider or major or operating company. And then I believe the most difficult during that time, of course, when we because when I first joined, I not only tackle geology, but I also need to learn the petrophysics, because my mentor is actually domain in petrophysics. So I need to learn also petrophysics application where I don't have enough knowledge. And I still remember first when I basically do kind of like say software or demo evaluation for the petrophysics. Yeah, the petrophysics is kind of like 20 years experience, and I just joined like 2 or 3 months. That's my that's the scariest experience that I had, because with limited, yeah, so how we communicate, yeah, within this gap, yeah. So but this is quite a good experience, because you can advance yourself, right? You know where you are lacking at, and then you are working with it, right? And then within less than a year as well, I believe I also do the presentation for operation geologists around, I believe, like 20 people, and that's a good experience exposure. Yeah. Yeah. But I believe the gap itself, yeah. And then when we deal, for me, because I'm a service provider, when we deal with the client, your client frustration, sometimes your clients get angry, and because of the application is not working or something like that, then you really need to tackle it. You need to really patient, right? Yeah. So this is quite challenging when dealing with a client with this kind of situation. Yeah, but it's part of the job, right? Yeah. So with the experience, I believe, yeah, then you will advance yourself, yeah, with by time, and by willingness, right, to learn and to improve more. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's all from my experience.
Thank you, Miss Noor.
You're welcome. Yeah, I can see someone raising hand.
Sorry, no fine, Celia. So please go ahead with your question.
Assalamualaikum everyone. I'm Ain, one of the students from Master of Petroleum Geoscience UM. Thank you for a very good presentation. I have a question regarding the stochastic modeling. Can you explain how do we choose which method should we use in the stochastic model? For example, in the fishes modeling, do we use SIS or PGS?
Okay.
And in physical, do we use the STS or GRS? Thank you.
Okay. All right. That's a good question. Thank you, Ain. So basically, for the modeling, right, we have deterministic and stochastic approach. So when you do the stochastic, basically when you have less data available, right? Yeah, so you are uncertain about something, then we basically goes with stochastic, because with stochastic here we can provide multiple output, yeah, for you to look at. Then based on your question on the stochastic approach, let's say for question modeling, we have different algorithms. We have SIS, the sequential indicator simulation. We have translated quotient, and we also have other, let's say, object modeling, right? So how to choose the correct method? You need to look back at your data. You need to back the complexity of the data type that you have, let's say the concept here, the geological information that you have, let's say the environment. Let's say the positional environment, let's say, is it fluvial? Is it channelized environment? Is it if it's channel environment, then you can go with the object modeling. If you are certain about the object itself, let's say, is it measuring channel, or is it let's say geobody or sandbar, then you go with this object modeling. If you are not certain, right, either this is a channel or this is kind of other geobodies geometry, right, within your faces, then you go with SIS, yeah, sequential indicator simulation, which is pixel based. So this pixel based, it doesn't give you exact geometry, but you can see the fraction or distribution of each of the faces that you run. This one pixel based. Then if, let's say, you know the environment, let's say you have a proximal, you have distal, you have, let's say, translational environment within your faces, then you need to choose the truncated Gaussian. Because this truncated Gaussian, you have exact phase shift relationship. You know, let's say section A comes after phase shift B, and phase shift C comes after phase shift B. Then you know this sequence. It cannot, let's say phase shift B cannot come after phase shift A. Yeah, you have the exact boundary within the phase shift, let's say the transition of go to the truncated Gaussian, either with trends or not. So this is how we determine. So either it's overall look at your geological, let's say, the positional environment, let's say, for the fishes, right? And then similar also with the petrophysical model. For statistic petrochemical, actually the the SGS and GRFS, sequential Gaussian and Gaussian random function simulation, the GRFS, this is enhancement from the SGS. Yeah, so both actually run based on Gaussian algorithm, but one is run sequential, another one is run it's like parallel, much more faster and better. I prefer for you to run using the GRFX because earlier on we only have MTX, but the enhanced version of MTX we call it GRFX. Yeah, so most of the time goes with Gaussian random function simulation. Yeah, which is much more faster than SGS. Is it answer your question, Ain?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so we have Nurshida having a question also.
Okay, all right.
Assalamualaikum, Puan Farhan. Thank you so much for a good presentation. My name is Noshida. I'm currently a petroleum geoscience master student. So I have two questions for you. The first one is, how do we handle negative grid cells in our property? Basically to avoid overestimation or underestimation of our project. Okay, so if you can share some tips and best practices, then that would be much more appreciated. The second question, in one of your slides, you did mention about secondary information for property modeling. So what is the example of secondary information that we can use for this property distribution?
Okay, correct.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rashida. Yeah, nice to see you.
Yeah.
All right. So to tackle the question first on the negative cell, right? Negative cell volume that basically will impact our volumetric, right? Either is will be underestimate or say by our volumetric. So first when this negative cell volume, right? So first we can see with geometrical modeling, right? They're using negative cell volume, then we see if we filter this cell, then and we need to we know where is the location of these cells, right? So most of the time, this negative cell will arise near to your structure, let's say your faults, right? Yeah, if let's say the complexity of the fault, and if let's say you run the corner point grid method, then most likely you will get it. Even in during the structural framework as well, let's say the deeper grid, you also can get this kind of negative cell. So it can either coming from your structure or the faults, yeah, and then you need to look back at your fault, or sometimes it also can come from, let's say, the well top, right? If the deeper grid or the deeper grid type of the model, when you run, you get the negative cell, most probably because of the horizon, because of the well tops. Then we need to look back the well top. Let's see, is it properly interpreted, or is it very huge mismatch between the well top and the original interpretation that you have, and also you and also of course sometimes most of the time it can relate to your structure. Then either you go or check back the structure itself, right? The faults, let's say if it's, let's say you have like kind of a triangulated cell near to the fault, yeah, and then what is it caused because of the fault connectivity or pinch out, and then you need to look at to look at this kind of issue. Yeah, if the interpretation normally because of the well part, or it can go to the fault sometimes. So I believe most of the time because of this kind of issue that's actually contribute to the negative cells. Yeah. So to overcome this kind of issue, then we need to understand first the location of the negative cell. And if you know the location of the negative cell, is it close to the fault, close to the well, near to the well? If near to the well, most likely you need to check with the well tops. If it's the fault, then you need to see the fault relationship or connectivity transition within the fault itself. And then sometimes it also the fault and the horizon itself, right? The relationship between the fault and horizon. Yeah, you need to check between this. So, but if let's say you see that in the middle of nowhere, then you have the negative self, then that's something you need to look at into the grid or mesh itself. If this is for the deeper grid, right? Yeah, because when for the structure framework itself, right? So the grid mesh itself, you can use it using the QC manager. We have QC manager for the forms and also the meshing for the 3D grid itself, which is referring to the grid geometry itself. Yeah, this is some of the points that where you can look at and how you can overcome this negative self issue. Yes. And the second one on the sorry again. What is the second? Sorry, it's the second question.
Secondary information for property modeling. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So, for the secondary property, of course, yeah, you can use the secondary information. Let's say, most commonly used from the seismic attribute. Let's say your relative equity impedance, yeah, any other attributes from the seismic that actually can help you with either your heading or metrophysical model. Apart from that, let's say you also can have, let's say, we call it the geometrical trend modeling. You can use the output from this process, but this is more on the geometry. Let's say if it's a channel, you can have, let's say, kind of the channel, the polyline of the channel, and you can create the property out from this geometrical trend to see, let's say, the distance from the channel, and then from this distance to the channel, for example, then you can create a probability of your channel and of your crevasse plane, for example, using a calculator, and then you can basically use this as a secondary to control the geometry of your channel or of your object, for example. So either is it geometrical trend modeling or is it using the seismic? Yeah, most of the time it's a seismic. Yeah, and then I believe this is the most commonly used, right? Apart from that, you have kind of like the information coming, let's say, from the analog. Let's say if you are working on the facades using transitional environment, you have a conceptual of that. Then you can use, let's say, either, let's say, you have the image or something that you can guide on. We also can use it, yeah, to guide with our facades property, for example. Okay. And I believe this kind of information, this is very helpful to basically help you with your facades and petrophysical. And for example, for petrophysical, we have also geometrical model, let's say for water saturation, let's say using high urban contact, we also can use it to guide as a soft constraint for our water saturation model. Yeah. I hope this answer your question.
Yes, very good, very clear. Thank you, Kak Farhan.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Do we have any of the participants having another question? Okay. Ms. Nurfa, I have a question personally. I think I have two questions. The first question is, you just talked about your experience getting into the industry. So I would like to ask, if expectation then is still the same now, or we have to bring a lot as a fresh graduate. I just need some clarification about that because it seems nervous seeing slides with a lot of details and all. So I want you to make clarification on that. Then also from our EAG members, the females would like you to please give them a brief about how you were able to juggle between being a wife, a mother, and also working among men in the industry. So it wasn't feeling weird to you. They want to hear your point of view. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. For the first question, it is related to the presentation or
Come again.
your first question regards to the presentation, the details, or
Yeah, I just want to know the expectation from the industry as what they expect of you as a fresh graduate.
Okay. All right. So for the fresh grad, right? Okay. So, for the expectation, I believe within this because the current era, I believe like this time when I first graduate, then it's a different start. It's quite a big gap now with all the digitalization. But still, if we are looking at the same criteria, of course, you have to get a good understanding or basic of your domain, right? Geology, geophysics, whatever that you pursue. Then you have, of course, to get a good grade, right, from the university, and not only 100% refer to the good grades, but of course, the most important that I can say also your attitude or your behavior. This also will impact, yeah, because your attitude, even though let's say you score let's say for flat, but the attitude wise is not really good, then it is something also the company will look at. Of course, the soft skill, how your the leadership and that problem solving, all those things that's like a standard criteria, right? They still applicable, right? With the current time, but of course, with this digitalization, if you know some of the digital data analytic or something that yeah, apart from what you have learned from the geology or something, then this is also it's a kind of a good exposure with current digitalization era that I can say. Yeah. So apart from that, the rest, make sure you have a good the understanding of your domain, strong domain knowledge, and then also you have a good attitude, and then working with others, your adaptability. So all of it will take into account. You have to prepare yourself for the future when you're working or join the oil and gas industry. And then for the second question, yeah, for the women, female employees, we did it majority dominated by the main employees, right, in this oil and gas industry. Yes, when I joined Slamaji, I was still single. After 2 years, then I'll get married, and then at the early stage of my career, so it's tough, yeah. I need to be honest. It is tough, yeah. Especially if you have kids, small kids, then but you need to have like a good kind of a time management. I know it's not 100%, but you need to give like a priority, right? Between the work and also between the family. It's not easy, but yes, you can do it, right? So even with my current condition, I'm actually with I have 3 kids right now. Yes, and my husband is away. It's not in KL. So of course, juggling between the works and the kids, yeah, is hard, but it's manageable. Yeah, you need to manage the expectation. Yeah, let's say the household, everything, you cannot be like 100% perfect on that, right? Because you have other things to commit. Yeah, and of course, need to prioritize. Yeah, what is the most important, right? Yeah, so because both career and family is important, but how you prioritize these two things. Yeah, but of course you can do it. Yeah, and then time management is really important. Yeah, when you have I see when you have a family. Yeah. Yeah. Go.
My question. Actually, in the chat box, a colleague of mine, her name is Balkiza Ismail Fariza. She's a postgraduate student at the Radiology Science department. So she said she is new to petrol and geomodeling. However, she just wants a bit of an explanation of her view on minimizing the bias, how she can minimize bias in uncertainty analysis. So also she wants you to just give a quick explanation of how to run what the P10, P50, and the P90, yeah, what they actually stands for. So she wants to have an insight. So I don't know if you get the question.
Okay, yes, okay. Thank you for the questions from Bakis. So from my presentation, I show you on the uncertainty analysis, right? So this uncertainty analysis, because we know that our data that we have or our model cause that will, right, consists of lots of uncertainty because we don't know exactly what's underneath or within the subsurface lines, right? It depends on the data that we have. Let's say if we have within the model just like a couple of wells, how do you determine that there's a, let's say, measuring channel underneath that? So this you will have need to run a certain indicator. This because it will impact on the volumetric itself. So, for example, this uncertainty basically lies within the structure, within the productivity, or within any type of the data that you have. So, of course, to reduce the uncertainty, the more data that you have, you will get a better result, a good result, right? So, but because of the limitation of the data, then we set in let's say if I give you example, for example, let's say the channel itself, like say if we know we have a channel like environment, let's say, and then what is, let's say, the width of the channel or the special distribution of the channel, this is uncertain, then we can set a value, for example, the channel width. Let's say from our base model meaning that before you can run uncertainty, you need to complete one model from structure until the volumetric. So we consider this as a base case. Yeah, so this base scenario, basically you run based on the available data that you have, right? And based on the, let's say, conceptual model or whatever information that you have, you build and then you get one volume. And from this volume, you have, let's say, you're uncertain about the structure because of the, let's say, structure, because of the velocity model, because of the domain conversion, right? So you can put, let's say, if the structure, the original structure, let's say, if it can go up, let's say 20 meter, can go down 20 meter, we put this value in the uncertainty analysis to see, let's say, the original in place. Let's say you have one value, right? Say A value, and then when you run the uncertainty, you can go the range, right? The volume range. Yeah, it can get smaller, it can get more, yeah, increase or decrease based on the uncertainty range that you set. Let's say the higher structure or the lower structure would impact the volume itself. That's what we want to see. So between this range of the value, right? So we need to understand from the range of the volume distribution, what is the most probable volume, which is we refer to the mid case, or we refer to the P50 volume, or what is our least probable. Let's say what is our P10 or P90, or even sometimes people not really look into this P10, P50, P90, maybe because this is referring mainly from the static point of view. This is for the volumetric, but we also need to remember on the connectivity or the size of the dynamic as well, because we can have a good volume, but it doesn't 100% refer to the good connectivity. So this information also lies within the uncertainty, right? So it's good, for example, to cater this kind of issue, let's say we can add signs of the dynamic. This is the best approach, but this will require additional, let's say, technology for this, right? So while you're running the static, not only the volume, you also to look at the connection, the connectivity between the volume itself. It's not only the volumetric, but the connectivity. So because your P50, let's say you pick that P50, that within that P50, it can lie the volume range, but the volume is good, but the connectivity might not be good. So when you pass to the RE, then there will be an issue, for example, right? So this uncertainty, this is to minimize, right? What's the range, the volumetric distribution that we have within our model, and then we need to pick the best cases within this range, because we cannot get, let's say, 100 cases to the RE to run. We need to normally we choose between P10, P50, and P90. The least, the middle, and the most extreme case. Yeah, the highest and the middle and the least case. Yeah. So for them to run the dynamic simulation. So this is what the uncertainty needed. And also the uncertainty is you see that we have the sensitivity. So the sensitivity normally sense we will sense what the most uncertain parameters. Let's say your porosity is most uncertain, and then we need to look back. Let's say with your porosity, porosity property. What's actually how you can minimize this uncertainty within the porosity. Let's say, is it coming from the equation coming from the function that create, let's say, water solution or porosity itself, or is it because the model, when we run the model, we run, let's say, the mismatch between the original data and the upscale cell, for example, it can lead to this kind of uncertainty, right? So, but it depends on at which stage, at which either the structure or is it property. So you need to look at and then how it impact and how to minimize this, right? So that's why we run the sensitivity to see this the list of the uncertain parameters. What is the most uncertain that contribute and what is the least? Yeah. So we constant what's the most because it will impact the volumetric itself. I hope it's answer the questions from Marquis.
Thank you. That's very clear.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bahana, for the concise answer. Thank you so much. Also, I have a colleague of mine having a hand raised. So I'll pass the floor to her now. Akila, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. So, hello, Miss Nurfah. My name is Nur Akila. I am also a postgraduate student from University of Malaya. I have a simple question because based on your previous slide, you showed about divorce based type reading and also pillar reading. So I'm still new about the trial, so I would like to know, could you please give a brief explanation on the differences between the depot reading and also the pillar reading? Thank you.
All right. Yeah. So for this counterpoint reading, this is a traditional and a well-established method. Yeah. For the figure reading, the difference basically first on the how the grid actually built, right? So first on the figure grading, the way let's say first on the grid it built. Let's say if you look at the at the fault, let's say fault model itself, right? The pillar grading, the fault, we model the fault under the corner point grading, or we call pillar grading, based on the key pillar. Key pillar means that like one stick that consists of the shape point that control the geometry of the fault. Let's say if two shape point, you have vertical fault. If let's say five shape point, it's basically the curvy fault, right? And then from this, for the deeper grid coming from the structural framework, where first on the fault model, we model the fault based on the plane, the fault plane, not the stick itself, right? So that's why it can handle more complex city of compared to the blade reading. Apart from that, the corner point reading, it will go to one process called pillar reading, where it tries to match each of the, let's say, shape point that we have that we put within our course to create a kind of the good skeleton. We want to try to build good orthogonality between the cell itself, right? So this is where the complexity is actually a bit limited when we do the pillar grading. But when we run the fault framework or the structure framework that I show you, because we take the whole plane itself, yeah. So we took the whole plane and then it doesn't care in between, right inside the key pillar or whatever, there's no key pillar there. So it can handle most complex faults. And apart from that, in terms of the horizon, the method from the corner point grading, the pillar grading, from the mid horizon process, this is using surface space. It will build based surface by surface. But for structure framework itself, coming from the volume. That's why we call it volume-based modeling. Yeah, and then it based on the sequence stratigraphy of your model. So this is another difference. And then why I say the structure framework, because the depot grid originally coming from the structure framework that we convert into the either depot grid or the stack. And of course, in terms of grid itself, for the geometry itself, the corner point grid, you will the object grading or CPG, we have a good port framework, but because to handle complex port, sometimes we do have kind of a twisted cell, or sometimes we have not really good cell, non-orthogonal cell, so that impact our model. So this actually resolve within the, let's say, if you run the depot grid, because at the fault, it actually totally cut the cell at the faulted area. Yeah, so where you have a nice fault geometry and also still maintain the orthogonality of the cell. So both fault and grid geometry is actually preserved. Yeah, and then of course this depot grid, this is based on depot space calculation, right? In fact, to the depositional environment, where how before we do let's say have the depositional, we have during the process we need to remove everything, right? Yeah, the faulting that we have to run this depot space back to depositional environment. That's why we have the depot. We call it depot grid, right? And then the grid itself is unstructured cell. Yeah, that is actually cutting through the faulted area. But away from fault, then you still maintain the orthogonality of the cell. I'm not sure if you can get the message here. Is it okay? Let's see, Akil almost asking this.
It's Adila. Thank you so much, Mr. Farhan. Yeah, I'm very clear with the explanation. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So thank you, Ms. Nopal. So from the chat box, we have another question from Mr. Annie from Bicep. He said, let's say you have a field with only one well. Does the property distribution have uncertainty of P10, P50, P90 cases? Have you ever had any experience where the subsequent wells tree have better coherence to the P10 or P90 model instead of the base case?
Okay, so for this one well, okay, so this very limited data that we have, right? So with 1, 2, or 3 wells, even to perform data analysis of this few wells, not enough actually, right, to get all these uncertainties. Of course, as for data analytics, we basically need to have, let's say more than, let's say, 20, 15 wells to get the good data analysis on this, right? So of course, when we have only one well, what we need to look at other input, right? Say the analog, other study from the nearby fields to get more information, yeah, to increase our confidence within this. But with one well, is pretty hard, and depending on the complexity, let's say the structural or the stratigraphic complexity that you have within the model itself, right? So for P10, P50, P90, of course, for this because of the limited well, right? Yeah, so basically it can, yeah, there's actually a chance that the one that you selected is actually better. Actually, when we have better than the one that we pick from the base case, right? Let's say P10 or P90. But to avoid this kind of things, normally that's why I mentioned earlier when we run this uncertainty, because in the static we just look at the volumetric itself, yeah. So we need to add the size of the dynamic criteria. So that not only the volume, but we also look at the connectivity. Yeah. So this is to avoid this kind of issue happening, because without adding this kind of dynamic of flow or the connectivity within our model, then you will get a chance that the one that you pick is actually is not the best case that we present. within your patent, within your patent. Yeah. I'm not sure if it answer your question, who's it, Hanif?
Stanley, okay, he acknowledged that that was quite clear and precise. So, do we have any other participants who have a question? So, in the absence of none, would like to thank Mrs. Nofana, Rahim Osman for the insightful presentation given to us and the additional add-on tips for really fresh graduate. The questions she answered so clearly about the confusions we have about the P9 therefore. So we are superbly grateful and we once again thank you for honoring our invitation. We the EAG UF student. So now the next thing we have on our agenda is to take our quick photo shoot for record purpose. So we'd be glad if every participant on the meeting can please turn on their cameras.
Okay, so I'll be conducting the photo sessions. So I hope that everyone stay a bit while because this is quite prestigious. So I'm going to take first slide. 1, 2, 3.
Freestyle.
Another one. Okay, wait a second. Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, very good. Okay, I think that's it. That's all for now.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. That brings us to the end of the second technical week, and we do hope to have more participants next week. As earlier said, the last talk for first week was on geomodeling, but today it's also glad to have an in-depth of geomodeling. So we are confident that we would be having geomodelers among us. Used to be one of the geomodelers we'll be having. So thank you so much, everyone, and see you again next week. Assalamualaikum, and have a good Ramadan time. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.